A woman stands before Judge Caprio's bench. Complete silence. Not a single word escapes her lips. The tension becomes suffocating. Every person in that courtroom believes they're witnessing blatant disrespect, until the shocking truth emerges from the shadows. What Isabella Martinez did with her final $360 would shatter every assumption in that room. She faced mounting traffic violations, penalties closing in like a vice, but instead of saving herself, she handed every last dollar to a stranger's child. When Judge Caprio uncovers the reason why, his reaction ignites the internet and changes everything. This isn't just another parking ticket case. This is about sacrifice that defies logic, courage that breaks through silence, and the moment a judge encounters true heroism standing directly before him. April, Providence Municipal Court. A Thursday afternoon thick with routine bureaucracy and the mechanical processing of minor violations. Judge Frank Caprio, Providence's legendary compassionate jurist, reviews his afternoon docket with the seasoned eye of 3 decades on the bench. Then he sees it. A case that appears mundane on paper, yet carries a note that makes him pause. Defendant requests accommodation, Isabella Martinez. Multiple parking violations. Unpaid fines totaling exactly $360. Nothing remarkable. Nothing extraordinary. Nothing that could possibly prepare him for what's about to unfold. At precisely 2:15 p.m., the bailiff's voice cuts through the courtroom chatter, calling the case. What happens next freezes every conversation mid-sentence. A young woman in her late 20s approaches the defendant's table with movements that command immediate attention. Isabella Martinez moves with deliberate grace, her posture radiating quiet confidence. But something about her presence feels different, profoundly different. Her dark eyes sweep the courtroom with laser-focused intensity, not with nervousness, but with the heightened awareness of someone who experiences reality through an entirely different lens. She's dressed professionally in a simple navy blazer, carrying herself with understated dignity. Yet her visual scanning of every detail reveals a truth the courtroom hasn't yet understood. Behind Isabella, her older sister Carmen sits rigid with anxiety, glancing between her sister and the judge's bench with obvious dread. Carmen clutches her purse, checking her phone obsessively, knowing what's coming but powerless to stop it. The court clerk announces the case, consulting his files while casting a puzzled glance toward Isabella. Something about her intense visual focus, rather than auditory response, creates the first ripple of confusion. Isabella rises with fluid precision, her eyes immediately locking onto Judge Caprio's face with an intensity that seems to penetrate beyond the surface. She approaches the bench with unwavering confidence, but her absolute silence creates an atmosphere so tense it becomes almost unbearable. Judge Caprio looks down with those wise, compassionate eyes that have witnessed every conceivable human struggle. But this silence, this complete, unbreaking stillness, creates an entirely unprecedented dynamic. "Good afternoon, Ms. Martinez," Judge Caprio offers in his characteristically warm tone. Nothing. Isabella's eyes remain fixed on his face with such concentrated intensity that observers begin shifting uncomfortably, exchanging uncertain glances. Is she being defiant? Disrespectful? The tension escalates with each passing second. Judge Caprio tries again, speaking more deliberately. "Ms. Martinez, can you hear me?" Still nothing. The silence becomes deafening. Isabella continues watching the judge's face with unwavering focus, but her lack of verbal response sends waves of discomfort through every row of spectators. Carmen begins to rise from her seat, preparing to intervene, but Judge Caprio gently raises his hand. His judicial instinct tells him something deeper is happening, something that demands patience rather than assumptions. "Miss Martinez," Judge Caprio says this time, ensuring his face remains clearly visible to her. "Are you all right?" Then it happens. Isabella's response comes not through words, but through movement. Her hands begin to flow through the air with fluid, graceful precision. Her fingers dance through space with deliberate, meaningful gestures that instantly reveal everything. American Sign Language. The collective realization hits the courtroom like a shockwave. Isabella Martinez is deaf. She's been desperately trying to lip read and communicate through sign language this entire time, and nobody understood. Judge Caprio's expression transforms instantly from confusion to recognition, then to deep respect. He immediately requests an ASL interpreter, and within minutes, Sarah Chen, a certified interpreter, arrives and positions herself where both Isabella and Judge Caprio maintain clear visual contact. "Miss Martinez," Judge Caprio says through Sarah's interpretation, "I apologize for the confusion. Please tell me how I can help you today." And then Isabella's story begins, a story that will devastate and inspire everyone within earshot. "Your Honor," Isabella signs, Sarah's voice carrying her words with growing emotion. "I want to thank you for your patience and for providing an interpreter. I know I should have requested one in advance, but I wasn't certain I qualified for the service." Judge Caprio settles back, giving Isabella his complete, undivided attention. The entire courtroom falls into reverent silence, sensing they're about to witness something extraordinary. "Ms. Martinez, I see multiple parking violations with unpaid fines totaling $360. Can you help me understand your situation?" Isabella's hands begin moving with increasing confidence as her story unfolds like a revelation. "Your Honor, I work as a graphic designer for a small nonprofit organization. My salary is modest, but I love what I do because we create educational materials for children with disabilities." Sarah's voice carries Isabella's words with unmistakable emotion. "The parking tickets are all from downtown near the Providence School for the Deaf. I volunteer there 3 evenings every week, teaching sign language to families who have deaf children but don't know how to communicate with them." Judge Caprio leans forward, immediately recognizing this case involves someone who dedicates enormous time and energy to helping others, despite facing her own significant challenges. "That's admirable, Ms. Martinez. But help me understand why these fines remain unpaid. Some of these tickets are several months old." Isabella pauses. Her hands hesitate as she prepares to reveal something deeply personal, something that exposes her vulnerability completely. "Your Honor, 4 months ago, I learned about the Rodriguez family. Their 8-year-old daughter Maria was born deaf. Her parents had been saving for years, sacrificing, scraping together every dollar, to enroll her in a special program providing intensive language development and educational support." Isabella's eyes begin to glisten with tears as she continues. "The program costs exactly $360 per month. The Rodriguez family was just $60 short. Without this program, Maria would miss the critical window for language development, a window that closes forever if you don't act immediately." The courtroom holds its collective breath as everyone absorbs what's coming next. "Your Honor, I gave them the exact amount I had saved to pay my parking fines. Every penny. I couldn't let Maria miss this opportunity because I made mistakes with parking meters." Complete silence. Profound, reverent silence as the magnitude of Isabella's sacrifice settles over the courtroom like a sacred weight. Sarah continues interpreting. "I know it was wrong not to pay the fines, but I kept thinking, these are just parking violations. Maria's language development can't wait. Every month she misses is a month she can never recover. Ever." Judge Caprio stands from his bench, visibly moved by what he's hearing, struggling to maintain his judicial composure. "Ms. Martinez, you gave away your fine money you desperately needed, to help a child you barely knew access education?" "Yes, Your Honor. In the deaf community, we understand that language development is everything. A hearing child learns language naturally from birth, absorbing thousands of words before they even realize it's happening. A deaf child has only a narrow window to develop language skills. If we miss it, it's gone forever. The brain's plasticity won't wait for better timing or more convenient circumstances. Isabella's hands move with passionate intensity, her gestures revealing the depth of her conviction. Maria is thriving in the program now. She's learning to read, to express complex thoughts, to dream about her future. That was worth infinitely more to me than avoiding. Parking tickets. Judge Caprio asks the question burning in everyone's mind. Ms. Martinez, if you gave away your fine money, how were you planning to pay these violations? Isabella's response reveals the true depth of her character, the steel beneath her gentle exterior. I was working extra freelance projects on weekends and evenings, trying to earn the money back. It was taking longer than expected, but I was determined to pay what I owed. She reaches into her bag and produces a folder, handing documents to Sarah, who passes them to Judge Caprio. These are receipts showing the payments I've made to the Rodriguez family. And here's my payment plan showing how I was earning additional money to eventually pay my fines. I wasn't trying to avoid responsibility, Your Honor. I was just putting a child's urgent needs ahead of my own legal convenience. Judge Caprio takes several long moments to review Isabella's documents. As he reads, his expression transforms from judicial consideration to profound personal admiration. His eyes scan the papers, but his mind grapples with something far more significant than parking violations. When he finally speaks, his words carry the weight of 3 decades dispensing justice and the humility of encountering something truly exceptional. Ms. Martinez, he begins, ensuring Sarah can interpret with perfect clarity. In 30 years on this bench, I have never encountered someone who sacrificed their own legal compliance to ensure a child's educational development. He pauses, looking directly at Isabella, with profound respect that transcends the typical judge-defendant dynamic. What you did wasn't just generous. It was an act of understanding that most people would never even consider. You recognized that Maria's language development couldn't wait, but parking fines could. You made a calculated decision that human need trumps legal convenience. And you were right. Judge Caprio continues, his voice thick with emotion. You understood something that many people don't grasp. For a deaf child, early language access isn't just education. It's the foundation for an entire lifetime of communication, opportunity, relationships, and self-expression. Isabella nods, tears streaming down her face as she recognizes that Judge Caprio truly comprehends the significance of her impossible choice. Tell me about Maria now. How is she doing in the program? Isabella's hands begin moving with excitement and pride as she shares Maria's transformation. Your Honor, Maria is reading at grade level now. She's making friends, participating in class discussions, and last week she told her parents in perfect sign language that she wants to become a teacher for deaf children. Sarah's voice carries Isabella's emotion as she continues. Her parents have learned sign language too. Their whole family can communicate together now. Maria isn't isolated in her own home anymore. She isn't trapped in silence while conversation swirls around her. Judge Caprio nods with deep understanding. And what about your work at the Providence School for the Deaf? I've been able to help 12 other families learn to communicate with their deaf children. Some parents drive from 2 hours away to attend my classes because there's so little support available. They're desperate to connect with their own children. Judge Caprio stands and comes around his bench. An extraordinarily rare gesture that signals this moment transcends typical courtroom protocol. He approaches Isabella with genuine reverence. Ms. Martinez, I'm dismissing all your parking violations, every single one. Furthermore, I'm personally ensuring you never have to worry about parking near the school for the deaf again. The courtroom erupts in spontaneous applause, but Judge Caprio raises his hand for silence. But, more importantly, I want everyone in this courtroom and everyone who hears the story to understand what real justice looks like. It isn't blind adherence to rules. It's recognizing when human compassion must guide our decisions. Ms. Martinez, you are a hero, and I use that word with complete precision. Isabella stands trembling, overwhelmed by Judge Caprio's words and the courtroom's response. Your actions remind us that sometimes breaking a small rule to serve a greater good isn't just acceptable, it's admirable. It's what defines us as human beings capable of moral reasoning rather than robotic rule following. What happens immediately after Isabella's court appearance becomes a breathtaking example of how one person's generosity can ignite an entire community's transformation. As Isabella exits the courtroom, multiple people who witnessed her sacrifice approach with extraordinary offers. Dr. Amanda Foster, an audiologist present for an unrelated matter, stops Isabella and through Sarah's continued interpretation, makes an incredible commitment. Isabella, I run a private audiology practice. I want to provide free hearing evaluations and hearing aid consultations for any family you work with. Your sacrifice for Maria should be multiplied, not just admired. Mr. James Wilson, a local businessman who owns several downtown parking lots, approaches with another stunning offer. Ms. Martinez, I'm creating reserved parking spaces near the School for the Deaf, specifically for volunteers and families. Your parking troubles are over, and so are everyone else's who comes to help. But the most touching response comes from an unexpected source that reduces everyone to tears. Maria Rodriguez herself appears, accompanied by her parents, who had been contacted by court staff after Judge Caprio's public praise. 8-year-old Maria approaches Isabella, and in clear, confident sign language tells her, "Miss Isabella, because of you, I can tell my mama and papa that I love them. Before, I could only feel it. Now I can say it." Isabella kneels to Maria's level, tears streaming down her face as she signs back. "Maria, you've given me more than I ever gave you. Watching you succeed makes everything worthwhile." Maria's mother, Rosa Rodriguez, speaks through Sarah's interpretation, her voice breaking. "Isabella, you saved our daughter's future. We didn't know that without early language development, Maria might never have been able to fully communicate. You gave her the gift of language itself, the ability to think in complex ways, to express her inner world, to connect with humanity." Within days, Isabella's story spreads through Providence like wildfire, then ignites across social media nationwide. Local news interviews her with Sarah interpreting, and Isabella uses the sudden platform to advocate for greater support for deaf children and their families. The response becomes overwhelming. Local businesses begin offering discounts and services specifically for families dealing with deafness, creating a more inclusive community infrastructure that didn't exist before. The Providence School for the Deaf receives increased funding and volunteer applications. Support groups for parents of deaf children multiply across the region. 6 months later, Isabella has expanded her volunteer work from 3 evenings to an official part-time position at the School for the Deaf, where she coordinates comprehensive family support services. "Every family I help," Isabella signs, "I remember that feeling of knowing a child needs help and being able to provide it immediately. That's what community should be. Immediate response to need, not bureaucratic delays and impossible barriers." Her supervisor reports, "Isabella has helped over 50 families navigate the complex world of deaf education and services. She's become our most effective family advocate because she understands both the technical challenges and the emotional devastation of communication barriers." This is what makes Isabella's story transcendent. She didn't just help one child. She discovered her calling and transformed how an entire community supports families facing deafness. 1 year after that silent moment in Judge Caprio's courtroom, Isabella returns. Not for legal troubles, but for a celebration that brings together everyone whose lives were transformed by her impossible choice. The courtroom overflows with families from the Providence School for the Deaf, volunteers, community leaders, and the original courthouse staff who witnessed Isabella's transformative moment. Judge Caprio beams as Isabella approaches with Sarah interpreting, accompanied by Maria Rodriguez, now 9 years old and thriving both academically and socially. Isabella, Judge Caprio says warmly, welcome back to my courtroom. But this time you're here as our guest of honor. Isabella signs her response. Your Honor, this past year has been incredible beyond my wildest imagination. What started as my embarrassment about unpaid parking tickets became the most meaningful work of my life. She gestures toward the packed courtroom. These families represent 50 children who now have access to language development services because our community decided to support them after witnessing what happened here. Judge Caprio nods with obvious pride. Tell me about the scholarship fund that was created in your name. The Isabella Martinez Language Development Fund has helped 32 children access early intervention services. But the most powerful change has been cultural. Families no longer feel isolated or ashamed. They feel supported and celebrated. Then Maria Rodriguez steps forward, and in confident, fluent sign language interpreted by Sarah, addresses Judge Caprio directly. Your Honor, because Miss Isabella helped me, I can tell you that I want to become a judge like you someday. I want to help people like Miss Isabella helped me. Judge Caprio's eyes fill with tears as he responds. Maria, any courtroom would be lucky to have a judge who learned about justice from Isabella Martinez. Rosa and Carlos Rodriguez approach with their own update, speaking through Sarah. Your Honor, we've learned sign language and our whole family communicates together now. But more than that, we've become advocates for other families facing the same challenges we did. We're paying forward what Isabella gave us. Isabella presents Judge Caprio with a photo album documenting the community changes that resulted from her case. Tangible, measurable transformations. Your Honor, here are pictures of the new Family Resource Center, the volunteer parking program, the expanded interpreter services, and 12 new support groups for families with deaf children. All of this emerged from one moment of understanding in your courtroom. Judge Caprio examines each photo with genuine amazement. Isabella, one act of selflessness created all of this. Your Honor, I think the selflessness was always there in our community. My situation just gave people permission to express it, to prioritize human need over rigid rule following. Judge Caprio stands and addresses the packed courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen, 1 year ago, Isabella Martinez taught us that true justice isn't just about following rules. It's about recognizing when human compassion must guide our decisions. He turns to Isabella with profound respect. You showed us that sometimes breaking a small rule to serve a greater good isn't just acceptable, it's admirable. It's what distinguishes human judgment from mechanical compliance. Then, Judge Caprio produces an official document. Isabella, I have something special for you. The City of Providence hereby declares this Isabella Martinez Day, recognizing your sacrifice for Maria Rodriguez and your ongoing service to families throughout our community. Isabella signs her response through Sarah, her hands trembling with emotion. Your Honor, every day should be a day when we put children's needs first and respond to human struggle with immediate compassion rather than bureaucratic indifference. Isabella Martinez's story spreads far beyond Providence, becoming a national symbol of how individual sacrifice can transform entire communities and how true justice considers human need alongside legal requirements. 2 years after her court appearance, Isabella is invited to speak at the National Conference on Deaf Education, where she addresses hundreds of educators, advocates, and policymakers with the same quiet dignity she showed in Judge Caprio's courtroom. "When I gave Maria Rodriguez my fine money," Isabella signs to the conference, "I wasn't trying to be heroic. I was simply responding to immediate need with immediate action, something we should all do more often." Her presentation receives a standing ovation lasting several minutes. 3 universities offer her full scholarships to pursue graduate degrees in deaf education policy. Judge Caprio, attending virtually, reflects, "Isabella didn't just help one child that day. She demonstrated that our legal system works best when it recognizes the difference between technical violations and moral obligations. She reminded us that justice without compassion is just tyranny with paperwork." The Isabella Martinez Language Development Fund has now helped over 100 children access early language services. Each family commits to helping the next family in line, creating a continuous cycle of support that perpetuates Isabella's original sacrifice. The Providence School for the Deaf has become a nationally recognized model program, with delegations visiting from across the country to learn about their community-supported family services model, all sparked by one woman's impossible choice. Now, working full-time as the family advocacy coordinator for the school, Isabella continues helping families navigate the complex world of deaf education and services. "Every family I meet," Isabella signs, "I remember being that person who saw immediate need and responded immediately. That's what advocacy should be, eliminating the gap between recognizing need and meeting it." The school's director reports, "Isabella has revolutionized how we support families. Her approach isn't just about providing services. It's about building communities where deaf children and their families feel valued, understood, and celebrated, rather than isolated and ashamed." Isabella's story reminds us that heroism often looks like choosing someone else's urgent need over our own minor inconvenience. That true communication happens through actions as much as words, and that sometimes the most profound impact comes from quiet, consistent service, rather than loud proclamations. She showed us that being a good citizen isn't just about following rules. It's about recognizing when human compassion should guide our choices. Judge Caprio's response to Isabella proved that justice isn't just about punishment and compliance. It's about recognizing and celebrating the actions that make our communities stronger, more compassionate, and more connected. Isabella Martinez didn't just help one child access education. She transformed how an entire community understands justice, sacrifice, and the immediate response to human need. Her silent entrance into that courtroom became a deafening call for all of us to prioritize people over procedures, children over convenience, and connection over comfortable indifference. Sometimes, the most powerful communication happens not through words, but through actions that speak louder than any voice ever could. Isabella Martinez proved that heroism doesn't always announce itself with dramatic fanfare. Sometimes it walks silently into a courtroom, hands trembling, eyes focused, ready to face consequences for doing what was undeniably right. And sometimes justice isn't blind at all. Sometimes it sees clearly, understands deeply, and responds with the compassion that transforms shame into celebration and sacrifice into legacy.